Can't get around it. And not only will I name the enemy, I will do whatever it takes to defend America from these haters of mankind.
U.S. job openings surged in February to a 14-year high, yet employers filled fewer of those jobs than in the previous month. Rita Foley reports.
There were more than 5 million jobs open in February, the most in 14 years, and far fewer Americans got laid off. In fact, the experts say if you're employed now, you've got a pretty high degree of job security. So what's the bad news? Skittish employers filled fewer of the available jobs than they did the month before, a sign they may have been spooked by a stumbling economy, but not worried enough to cut more jobs. Experts think that skittishness is only temporary. Rita Foley, Washington.
Texas is attempting to toughen up its parental consent laws for minors seeking abortions. Charlie Butts reports.
Several bills have been submitted to make sure minors have needed protections to obtain an abortion through going to court, but otherwise must have parental consent. Emily Horn of Texas Right to Life Committee.
The way the law is written right now, people feel comfortable saying that we have parental consent laws in Texas. However, with the way the bypass is written, it makes the parental consent law meaningless because if a girl doesn't want to ask her parents, she doesn't need to. She can go to any judge in the state for permission to get an abortion instead of going to her parents.
The comprehensive reform bill places into effect certain restrictions.
Where the girl can file, the reasons for which the judge needs to make a bypass, makes her actually need to prove the things that she is alleging, raises that standard that she has to prove it by. It says that she can no longer file in any county in the state. She actually has to file either in the county that she lives in or in a district court that has jurisdiction over the county that she lives in.
Currently, abortion businesses like Planned Parenthood can furnish an attorney and go to a court where they know a bypass will be granted. The new piece of legislation would stop that.
A media backlash erupted after an Oklahoma lawmaker suggested that the revised AP history course be replaced with one that doesn't characterize the U.S. as a nation of oppressors.
Oklahoma Representative Dan Fisher, the bill's sponsor, says this newer version of AP history is much different than the previous 2010 version because, for one thing, it does not use a fact-based approach to the study of our country's history.
It teaches students how to literally think and interpret history rather than emphasizing historical content. Whereas in the 2010 framework, it was knowledge of content. And then, of course, you can extrapolate and interpret history, but you don't have much to interpret if you don't know history first.
Because of the national attention and backlash, he decided to withdraw the bill and rework it so that it is less ambiguous.
So we just believe that the best thing to do was to pull this bill back and do some more homework, let everything calm down a little bit, and then we'll come back at it. Because we definitely are still against the type of, if you want to put it in quotations, history that this new AP framework is teaching.
He says it's not just Oklahoma. There are 8 other states that also have severe problems with the revised AP history course. I'm Bob Kellogg.
A group of consumer advocates has told the Federal Trade Commission that the new YouTube Kids mobile app targets young children with unfair and deceptive advertising.
Google introduced the YouTube Kids app in February as, quote, a safer place for kids to explore videos because it was restricted to family-focused content. But some consumer activists say the app is so stuffed with advertisements and product placements that it's hard to tell the difference between entertainment and commercials. The activists say digital media should be subject to the same rules as television, which limits commercial content on kids' programming. Nikki Mayo, Washington.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty P.
100 days, 100 subscribers at $7 will bring FirstAmendmentRadio.com to the minimum level necessary to sustain it through 2015. Go to support.FirstAmendmentRadio.com. $7 a month. Really, you can afford that for our Protestant First Amendment rights and the gospel of the kingdom message. Where your heart is, there will your treasure be also. Go to support.FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Years ahead of the dominant media, FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
Hi, everybody. It's Barry Chamish. Bit of a cold today. You'll forgive that.
My first guest is Mark Baird. He's the president of the Scott Valley Protect Our Water Foundation and the founder of the Jefferson movement. And I read about it today. It's complicated. We'll have to go step by step. Mark, are you there?
Yes, I am, Barry. Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. I spent the day reading all about you. Complicated issue, especially in the fact that this drought is in California is, it's just very real. All right, without diving into it. What's a Jefferson movement?
The Jefferson movement is an attempt by 20 rural Northern California counties to use Article 4, Section 3 of the United States Constitution to separate from California and form the 51st state.
Well, that's a pretty good summation, but is that, feasible?
Yes, it is. In fact, it's been done 4 times in our history, so this has historical precedent. It's not new law. It's been done before, and the founders must have foreseen the need, or they wouldn't have put Article 4 in the Constitution. And we believe, due to lack of representation, and water issues are certainly at the forefront of that lack of representation, the time has come for a 51st state.
All right, just before we dive into your state, and by the way, it's really it's not such a black and white issue. It's pretty darn complicated. Just give a press stint or two before we dive into this. Well, you've got a movement and you've got people backing it.
Yes, we do. We have 8 counties already that have signed declarations and petitions to withdraw from the state of California, and we have active committees in 12 more counties. So there are a lot of people that feel that the time is now. We've been oppressed by the state of California for far too long, and our state politically and governmentally doesn't work because it doesn't represent all of its people.
All right, let's go backwards just for 1 second, because I know what you're aiming for, and so do my listeners now, and we'll dive into the issues. But where has it happened before?
Well, it's happened in Maine from Massachusetts in 1820, and it took them 3 tries, by the way, to get away from Massachusetts, and Vermont from New York, West Virginia from Virginia, and I believe it was Tennessee from Virginia.
And by appealing to whom?
Well, Article 4 is pretty clear. You have to have 50% plus 1 vote in the state legislature, and you have to have 50% plus 1 vote in the United States Congress. So we'll have legislation introduced next January.
Stuff. Very hefty stuff. Not only the state of California has to agree, you're saying. Why should they?
Well, this is a win for all Californians, quite frankly. This state is ungovernable. It's almost 1,000 miles long. People in the urban South have issues that we don't understand and we're no help with. And we, in turn, have issues that Southern California and the big cities are no help with. In fact, their input is a detriment to us because of the one-man, one-vote principle. The northern 20 counties of California have 6 state-level representatives, and the southern 2/3 of California have 114. So you don't
feel any responsibility for the urban problems of the South?
Well, it's not that we don't feel responsibility, it's that we don't have any experience with those issues, and so consequently we're no help. And then when you look at that further, how could we possibly have input into situations that are 1,000 miles away? Our input is not only ineffective, but it would probably be wrong because, as Alex de Tocqueville said, the best government is the government that's local.
Well, I'd say everywhere. Well, let's take New York. I'd say that out there in, rural New York, they really are not responsible for the ghettos of Harlem or whatever issue you're talking about. But they weren't responsible, and yet they pay taxes to hopefully ameliorate the situation. It's not just you.
No, you're absolutely right. Ever since the basket of Supreme Court opinions culminating with Reynolds versus Sims, 38 state legislatures were forced to change the way they elected state officers. And that was the end
I don't know that. and I'm sure my listeners don't know that precept. What is Reynolds versus? You have to expand a bit here.
Okay. Reynolds versus Sims was the case where Chief Justice Earl Warren said that representation by geography is unconstitutional and that all state elections will be one man, one vote under apportionment schemes supervised by the court. But as we know from our history and looking at the United States Constitution, that under Article 1, there is representation by geography. It's called the Connecticut Compromise or the Great Compromise, where every state has 2 senators, no matter how big or small. And in the past, there were 38 state legislatures where every county had at least one state representative. And so literally Earl Warren declared the United States Constitution and the way the federal government works unconstitutional for the states who wrote the contract. And that was the end of adequate representation. What was done about it?
Yeah.
It forced at least 30 state legislatures to abandon the principle that communities deserve representation as well as the mass of people. Because
these
what we
are
had
very
in California,
tough issues. You expect people, to have a real legal knowledge before diving into your Jefferson movement?
No, we really don't, because we have white papers and we have a website that describe this very thoroughly. But what people do need to dive into is taking responsibility for how their lives are going. Our states are not governed adequately because rural residents do not have the same level of representation as urban residents, and that's just the fact since the Warren Court.
All right. Once again, I don't think you're alone in that, but I've said that already. But more to the point, you're talking that your resources and your economy are yours, and frankly, you're getting a raw deal from California, and you want out.
That's it in a nutshell. That's very well put.
Wow. Again, breaking away from a rich state that, by the way, I think everyone is suffering from the water shortage, but you're claiming that one valley is rich and green and one is drying up. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I'm saying is that the drought in California is largely a crisis in management. In 2013, the governor of California allowed almost 1 million acre-feet of water to go down the Sacramento River out to the ocean under the auspices of, quote, saving the environment. Well, that amount of water alone was enough to supply the city of Los Angeles for 1 year. And then the next year, oddly enough, he says, oh, gosh, we're in a drought. We need to pass an $8 billion water bond. Well, guess how much of that money is...
Was there any good that came out of flushing 1 million gallons into the ocean? Did something come out of that?
1 million acre feet. No, there was not only no good that came of it, but he sacrificed people and communities in order to gain political support to pass a water bond.
All right. Now you have to explain what was the water bond. You got to understand, my listeners haven't heard of this before. What was the water bond?
Well, the water bond is basically $8 billion worth of governmental pork projects for NGOs who support the governor's political agenda. Very, very little, if any, of that money will be used to actually solve water problems. And all states face these issues. That stems directly from our lack of representation, from not having enough local contact with the person you elect to say how you want to live your life in your state government. And that's based upon the Reynolds decision. When we lost direct representation for each county, you lost touch with the representatives at your state government. And that's where this experiment began to go wrong.
All right, back to the NGOs. They must have pushed, there must have been pressure on the government. They wouldn't have permitted this without pressure. Who were the NGOs and what were they getting out of it? And let's have a look at this issue.
Well, the NGOs are always this follow the money. The Coachella Valley Conservancy is going to get millions to build bike trails and viewing stations. Some outfit called the Ocean Conservancy is going to get $10 million to save the environment. The Santa Monica Mountain Conservancy, the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. None of these NGOs have anything to do with water conservation or causing more water to be saved for public use. None of them.
Well, what, again, did they pressure the government with?
Well,
what was
with lobbyists,
wrong
of course.
That, the government assuming this is a big assumption. They're honest and they're looking out for everybody's benefits and all this. What did they think they were bringing to the public in California, and what do you say they're taking from the public in California? Let's sort out this very complicated issue here.
Well, first of all, what they're taking from the public in California, in other words, in order to pay off this money, it's going to be $360 million a year for the next 40 years to the California taxpayers to pay for projects that will be gone and long forgotten within 10 years. That's what they're taking from the people of California. They're also taking our ability to build more water storage, which is what this money should be used for. In the western United States, west of the Mississippi River, almost all states share this problem. We're semi-arid. We need more water storage, not less. We need to spend money creating water storage so that the human population can benefit, and not throwing money down the dry hole of environmentalism and saving in this nebulous concept of saving the environment at the cost of the human population involved.
Well, again, assuming there was no drought, and this is 8 years now, this is... Look, they say at least 1,000, maybe more than 1,000-year-old drought. It's not something normal. What if you had the water? What if you didn't have to conserve it? Would you exist?
Well, of course, because in California, first of all, and most of the western states, when you look at the tree ring data, and there are many studies that point to this, sporadic and dramatic droughts are very common in the western United States. When you look at tree ring data, this happens again and again, and some of these droughts last for 50 years.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. This is not climate change. This is a normal cycle of drought. It can be linked to the Pacific Decadal Oscillation or Madden-Julian effect or any number of scientific principles. And what it tells us is if human beings want to expand their population in the western United States, we must store more water, and that's where our money should be spent, not on building bicycle trails and viewing stations.
Okay,
yes,
I'm
there is
going to
water to
repeat
store.
myself, and I'm going to start sounding a little dreary, but you're assuming there's water out there that can be stored.
Well, there's always water that can be stored if you store it when it hits the ground. For example, right now I'm looking outside, it's raining and snowing heavily. But there is no place for this water to go except down the river to the ocean. What we need to do is build in...
You're in Siskiyou County, which again is a new name to me, but you're saying it's snowing there right now?
Yeah, it's raining and snowing here right now.
And what does the snow fall as? I guess glaciers. I'm not sure. What does it fall as?
Well, this is a Pacific storm. It's very normal for this time of year. It drops a tremendous amount of water, and if we manage the storage of that water for times when there is no water falling, then we have water sufficient for our needs. If we condemn the human population,
dam the snow.
Yes. The snow stores itself in California up in the mountains. That's typically what our watersheds depend upon. But we also have the ability to impound rainwater should we so direct our politicians to do so. And we cannot do that because we have no representation.
All right, once again, California grows an awful lot of food for America.
25%.
But the water... Isn't it rainwater that goes into aquifers and they're pumped out, and when you have a balance, it works. When you don't, it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, there is a certain balance to it, but aquifers are funny things because they depend on surface water irrigation to recharge the aquifer. And what this state has been pushing for years is sprinkler irrigation in the attempt to conserve water, and that type of irrigation does not recharge the aquifer.
Where does it come from?
Well, table water comes from subsurface and surface water sources. For example, on my ranch, which is just under 1,000 acres, I water the grass by surface water. In other words, I flood the pasture with water. Now, that water soaks into the ground and goes into the aquifer and is released later in the season into the streams of the area to keep fish alive and to maintain the environment. It works very well. If I were to sprinkle my pastures, that water would evaporate. It would not do anyone any good except the plant in the immediate vicinity of the sprinkler.
Well, again, I know not a lot, but enough to know what drip agriculture is and how it really does save a lot of water, but I'm not even sure you're going to have even drip agriculture. You know, what you've got is a drought that's drying out the whole state, north and south.
It's not as bad as it sounds here. When you drive by Shasta Reservoir, Shasta Reservoir is about 3/4 full. There are places that are less than normal. Certainly the snowpack is less than normal. But if we devoted sufficient resources to water storage, and we had the ability to store for long periods of time the water we need during drought conditions, we wouldn't be in too bad a shape. But instead, we're spending the money on these idiotic do-nothing projects that simply make the government feel good and fill the coffers of these non-governmental agencies.
All right, I see where you're going. Naturally, I would turn to, the government of California, who's ever in charge of water, and present alternatives. They seem to be very, very worried. Well, even in Beverly Hills, you can't fill a pool. They've cut off 25% of all water. You can't even have your pool filled. I'm just going to ask you, Shred, why don't they use your alternatives if they work?
Because politically they're not expedient, and they don't pay off the people who reward political power with financial support. In other words, these are things that would do the people good, not the government and the agencies that continue the government. And what the politicians in Sacramento want is the money, and they, quite frankly, don't care nearly as much about the welfare of the people.
All right, that's a very serious accusation here. Look, I'm going to read from you. In our next half hour, we're going to dive into real details and things I didn't understand, like growing alfalfa and sending it to China and things that really were beyond me. But you approached the Capitol, went to Sacramento, and you gave your declaration. Now, here's your quote. To the offices of the Senate Secretary and Assembly Clerk. These are really flimsy civil servants. That's the best you could get to listen to you?
No, actually, that's part of the legal process in order to create standing and harm so that we can mount a federal challenge on California for lack of representation and dilution of vote, preparatory to forming our own state, or at the very least, overturning Reynolds versus Sims and going back to the federal model of government in California, where my county will have political representation in Sacramento.
Well, again, I'm saying Sacramento won't be part of your 51st state. I assume it will be removed. It'll go back to the South, and you'll find a new capital. No?
That's correct. But they're the ones we're going to have to sue to get away from California. So we have to create standing, and we have to show harm.
Did the Assembly Clerk really take notes, and is he really working on it? Honest.
Well, what he is responsible to do when you record with him, He is responsible to give a declaration and petition to each assembly person in the legislature. That's his job.
And will he?
Well, I don't know, but if he doesn't, that simply strengthens our case.
It really doesn't. If this doesn't go forward, I don't really see it being strengthened. But neither here nor there, we're looking at what you're doing as well. I got to know you. This is not an issue. Well, it wasn't unfamiliar to me. I'll be honest with you, all right? You've got a Jeffersonian movement, and you're trying for a legal challenge. I just don't see anyone helping you.
Well, we already have 8 counties that have signed declaration. That constitutes about 600,000 people, and we have active committees in 12 other counties for a total of 1.2 million people. So we have the people on our side, and in this country, that's quite frankly all we should need. You
mean to say the governments of these counties signed petitions? You got 12 actual governments saying we want out, we want to separate?
We have 8 actual governments. We have another vote on the 17th in Plumas County. We are near to votes in Colusa County, Trinity County, and Sierra County for a total of 12. And we have active committees in a total of 20 counties. So, yes, we have many governments that have already signed these petitions because they see that state government does not represent them.
Ooh, this is getting more interesting. How many counties are in California?
58 total.
So 12 is a chunk.
We have, we're going to have 12 soon, and once again, we're shooting for 20. But we don't need all 20 to form a state. We think between 12 and 15 counties would give us a viable state.
Well, what do you have in common with the other 11 to 14 counties? What makes you join together?
Our commonality is our history, our heritage, our resource-based economies, our people, our geography, the type of country we're talking about, and the traditional businesses we engage in. That's what we have in common with the 20 resource-based counties of Northern California.
All right, that's a mouthful right now. A resource state. Even that is... What's a resource state?
Well, resource-based means that traditionally, and there are 4 businesses from which all products on Earth spring. Those are mining, timber or wood products, farming, and energy production. Every product on Earth touches one of those businesses. Those are the businesses that the 20 counties in Northern California have historically engaged in, and we have been regulated out of 3 of those businesses by the state of California in their pursuit to, quote, stop man-caused climate change, which we believe is a hoax to begin with.
Oh, I would keep that quiet. All right. Let's not get into a much broader philosophical argument. I can see that you feel, well, when the next half hour comes, you're going to tell us about the social ills you've been suffering because of the state. But I would not mention man-made climate change unless you really want a debate. Oh,
I'm ready for it, but
all right,
that's another story.
We have to take a break. We have 3 minutes for commercials. When we come back, I'm going to plug me and you're going to plug you. And then we'll go, frankly, into why you're really pissed off. That's coming up for the next half hour, folks. Well, this is Mark Baird, my guest, and this is Barry Chamish, your host. We'll see you in 3 more minutes.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host, Melody Cedarstrom, right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, 1-800-375-4188.
Hey, folks, we've got a very, very interesting and unusual for, I guess, our listeners' point of view from Mark Baird, but I'm pushing myself. All my books are at lulu.com, www.lulu.com. Type in my last name where it says search box, Chamish, Chamish. That'll get you to all my books, none of which are terribly environmental. And Dave, thank you, David Salmon. You're keeping up my website, www.barrychamish.com. Mark, tell people how to find you.
Well, our website is soj51.net. And our financial models are what's happening in each county, what the declarations look like, what it is we're trying to do, and why we're trying to do it. It's all there.
I say repeat that. That was not catchable. Slowly repeat it.
It is called SOJ, S as in Sierra, O as in Oscar, J as in Juliet, 51.net. And that gives you all of the information about the Article 4, Section 3 state split and the 51st state of Jefferson.
And if you missed it, folks, we are archived for a week. You can hear Mark for a whole week at libertyarchives.com. Now, I'm reading a very tough agenda in a way, but it works like this. What you're saying is that the government owns thousands of properties in Northern California, and they're supposed to make payments in lieu of taxes but they haven't stopped payments in 10 years. They claim they're broke, and this has left you a welfare county or other welfare counties directly because the government has cut off money that was supposed to be paid in lieu of taxes. Now, look, don't go long on this one.
Well, first of all, PILT, payment in lieu of taxes, whenever a state or a federal government purchases property or somehow takes them off the property tax rolls, the PILT money is supposed to replace that revenue to the county so that they can continue to provide services for the people who live there. For example, in my county, the federal or state government claims to own 68% of the viable property in our county. So literally, our county government only has 32% of the property from which to gather tax revenue to supply services to our people. Now, those things are not constitutional, but they exist. And so the fight that we're in is how to get the state and the feds to pay their bills. In addition to that, we have a tax.
And end the movement if they paid?
No, absolutely not, because that's it's a significant amount of money, but it's not significant in the overall scheme of things. And in addition to that, it does not restore liberty to the people of Northern California. You know, what we want to do, Barry, we want to restore liberty and property rights, because without liberty, the money doesn't matter because you're going to be taxed out of it. And without liberty, the property doesn't matter because you won't be allowed to keep it and you won't be allowed to do what you wish with it.
All right, that's a mouthful. And again, why won't you be allowed to keep your property?
Because we're being taxed out of our property right now.
All right. I'm doing my best, and I'm not there, so you have to understand that I'm looking at this from a few thousand miles away, but what you're saying is that the government used to allow logging, now they don't, so you don't get taxes from timber. Look, what you're also claiming is catastrophic wildfires are government caused, essentially. And I'm reading you when you say that. What do you mean by that?
Well, for example, I'm a deputy sheriff in Siskiyou County, and so I was there. I saw the map that United States Forest Service had in the Incident Command headquarters, and that was the area they were willing to let burn without putting out the fire. So the United States Forest Service is directly and abjectly responsible for the burning of 2 billion board feet of merchantable timber in Siskiyou County alone last summer. They placed entire communities in danger with the compliance, with the culpability of CAL FIRE's agency. In other words,
you're saying if this was logged instead of burned, you'd get all these logging taxes and have people employed. I'm doing my best here. Is that what you're saying? It shouldn't have been burned. It should have been logged.
No, yes. I mean, look, timber is a renewable resource. It's growing all the time. And there are only two ways to remove fuel from a mountain: burn it or mechanically thin it, we say. So instead of mechanically thinning that and providing jobs for the people and providing new wealth, which is what this country and this state needs to save itself, is new wealth created by resources and people's labor. What they did was they allowed that timber to burn, and it not only destroyed species, it destroyed a tremendous amount of wildlife and is going to cause a tremendous amount of erosion, but now that timber is not going to do anyone any good. They are talking about salvage logging on 10% of that land, and they're really proud of that. We're laughing about it. 10% of that timber is nothing. And so that is...
Forest be saved? I mean, could firefighters actually put out the fires?
Oh, absolutely. I saw the Happy Camp fire start myself and my partner. It started with a lightning strike on one tree. They could have put that out with a shovel and 3 guys. And instead, 62,000 acres later, it finally burned down to the edge of the river and the edge of the highway and put itself out.
What was their thinking in letting it burn?
Well, that's United States Forest Service management philosophy is let fires burn. They manage a fire. They don't put a fire out.
That confuses me a bit. You're saying they did the worst possible thing knowingly?
That's right.
Oh, gosh. All right, you know what? Let's go to the next and give me credit, because this is not simple for me, all right? But I'm reading you and doing my best to understand. What you're really ticked about is 4 dams are going to be removed. Again, it's a river I've never heard of, the Klamath. Dive into that one. There's an Indian tribe that I guess are your foe.
Yeah, the 4 dams on the Klamath River, first of all, California's in a drought, right? And yet the governor of California proposes the destruction of 4 fully functional, perfectly maintained hydroelectric water storage facilities on the Klamath River, quote, in order to aid fish in their migration upstream. Well, first of all, you have to ask yourself, why would anyone possibly want to do that? And once again, follow the money. There is $2 billion in restoration money to restore the environment, supposedly after these dams are gone, and there are several Indian tribes lined up to gain the lion's share of that loot. I have a quote from a meeting we attended with one of these tribes.
By the way, how? Farmland, tourism, where does the lion's share come from?
Well, the lion's share is in what they call restoration, and they do projects. They'll plant willows along the side of the river, and they dig holes for fish to live in, and they do things like that. And basically, they're do-nothing projects that supply a lot of money to the entities who want to see these dams destroyed at the expense of the 70,000 electrical customers and all of the people who live along these dams.
70,000 out of a state with 36 million people is not a huge chunk.
However, 70,000 is a lot of people when you see your electric rates go up by 200 to 250%, because now you're going to have to buy more expensive sources of power. And in fact, it is the death of small communities in some cases. And that's exactly what we're talking about, lack of representation.
Are there lakes behind these dams?
Yes, there are. They have very important warm water fisheries, and they also have a lot of people who purchased lakefront property, and their property values are going to be zero when they're staring at a mud hole where they were staring at a lake.
It's not going to be worth much.
That's exactly right. What about those people?
I guess they would be compensated in some way, I suppose.
No, as a matter of fact, when the federal government did their little compensation survey, they appraised all of those properties as if they had no buildings on them. So those
even
people,
though they have building codes and they have homes on land with deeds, they get no legal right to defend their properties?
That's exactly right, because rural counties do not have representation in state government.
Oh, gosh. We're going to go on. Why do again, the Klamath tribe, I'm not sure how big it is. It's not, a major tribe. It's not like the Sioux or something. How many are there, and how were they pushing for this? I mean, who's pushing for destroying 4 dams?
Well, let me put it this way. The tribal chairman of the K-Rock tribe, who was and that's their name, the K-Rock tribe. That means Middle River in their language. He made the statement, and to a group of people from our water rights group, we asked him, do you really think tearing out those dams is going to save the fish? And here's what he responded. We don't care about the fish. We want our share of the money.
Well, okay. I'm not sure if that's a major point. In other words, the Klamath doesn't care about nature. It cares about being paid off.
That's exactly right. This is nothing more than an environmental bribe for all of the groups involved. But who suffers?
I'm going to go into
citizens.
Gosh.
The people that suffer are the citizens, the taxpayers, and the property owners of these schemes. We're the ones that foot the bill for this idiocy.
All right, here you go into the next topic. Again, I'm following you, and I do see the reason for your anger, but I assume there's another dimension somewhere here, unless we're talking really a very, very suicidal. Look, there's no rain. You're going to be committing suicide anyways. You may have to move out east to get water. But let's look at what has happened since. What you are claiming is drug abuse is soaring, spousal abuse and child abuse are rising, elder abuse is on the rise, unemployment is over 20%, county services have been cut, property crimes are on the rise, alcohol abuse and drunk driving are on the rise, public and safety, health and safety are at risk. I mean, that's a real bunch of social ills. You say this is all in the last, like 10 years?
Well, yeah, but when you look at how rural communities have been regulated out of all of their historic businesses, the opportunity for employment is gone. We used to have 19 lumber mills in Siskiyou County. Now we have 1. All of those jobs are gone. Our children are leaving because there is no economic opportunity due to regulatory processes imposed upon us by the state of California, which is literally a government from afar that has no empathy for how we have to live our lives or what it costs to live our lives. That's why we're talking about restoring constitutional republic to the 20 counties of Northern California, to restore our liberty, to use our property, to make a living for ourselves and our families.
Well, you're saying this would cure all this? You'd find a new economic source and you'd become lively again if you separated?
Exactly.
All right. Now, look, this social mess, you really believe that you have a cure? Just by separation, you'll cure this mess.
Constitutional republic cures a lot of things. Liberty cures a lot of things. The experiment that our founding fathers started in 1775 changed the world forever. It gave innovation and technology a chance. It gave business a chance. It gave people the chance to improve their own lives. Look, Thomas Gordon said in 1721, every plowman knows the difference between good government and bad. He knows because he knows how much of his own produce he gets to keep. That's what we're talking about. We know the difference between good government and bad, and we're being taxed out of our very property and regulated out of all of the businesses in which we engage by the government of California. That has to stop. We must separate, or we'll all be broke and we'll all be gone.
Well, now here's I'm going to give you the other side. You don't like this side, but why the dams are being opened is to save the short-nosed sucker, a fish.
I've heard that but all of these dams are 90 miles below where the short-nosed sucker lives. There are no short-nosed suckers near any one of these dams.
Well, then why is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife trying to save them? This is a claim of yours. I'm just quoting you.
Barry, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife was the same agency that poisoned Upper and Lower Klamath Lake in order to kill the suckerfish in the 50s to make room for, quote, commercially viable species. This is part of the lie government tells to cover the injustices which they hope to perpetrate on the people, all in the pursuit of the money.
Now, you're claiming this is more than the Klamath. You're claiming, the Shasta, again, a river I've never heard of the Scott. The Mid-Klamath, I would imagine, is in the middle of the Klamath. But you're saying you want to gain control of all of these again.
Well, we can, because all of those rivers are tributaries to the Klamath River. So once we stop the dam fraud, then those rivers will be allowed to flow as they historically have. One thing that the perpetrators of this environmental fraud wish to do is, by destruction of the dam, they can gain control of the flow of these other rivers by demanding minimum in-stream flows to supplement the Klamath River, because once the dams are gone, there won't be a minimum flow in the river itself.
Oh, Mark, I've got to say this. Don't you view the drought at least as a partial cause of this utter chaos? I mean, this is a calamitous of... look, if there was water, would you be this angry?
Well, this has a lot more to do with representation than it does with water, quite frankly. But what we see in rural California, once again, we see a government from afar imposing taxes upon us, which we have no representation to stop. In other words, we're taxed, but we have no say over how those monies are spent. The drought is only one indicator of why we're doing what we're doing. There are many, many, many reasons to do what we're doing. And the drought is simply one of them, or mismanagement of the drought, I should say. For example, our watershed doesn't have an overdraft, yet we're subject to the same water regulations that they're subject to.
You're free of this? Really? You have a wet area of California?
We have an aquifer that will allow our irrigators to pump water, provided the state doesn't impose Los Angeles-type drought restrictions upon them as well.
Okay, now there are all kinds of issues, and I didn't always understand them. So you help me out here. You really object to alfalfa and hay being grown and shipped to China, and I don't understand the issue at all.
Oh, I don't object to hay being grown and shipped to China. I don't know where that came from. We are in favor of agricultural producers being able to market their products wherever they can most benefit from that.
And you say they can't?
Well, no, I mean they can if they can grow it. Will they be allowed to grow it? Will they be allowed to exercise their property rights and their water rights? Those are the open questions. These guys know how to grow food. We know how to manage the property. We know how to take care of the environment here. These are local issues, and this land has been farmed for 150 years continuously. We know how to do those things if the state would stay out of our way. But they refuse to do that. They're constantly imposing urban standards on rural areas and rural communities, and we don't have the representation to stop them.
Yeah, I get well, I made the original point. That's pretty well true of everywhere. You've got rural and urban, and there's a balance reached, and, one supports the other, and
well, really, is there a balance? Is there a balance when all of the representation lies in the urban areas and urban legislators can impose taxes upon you that their constituents don't pay? Is there a balance when we in Siskiyou County, and we could set clean air standards for the entire world? The air is so clean here, it would absolutely mystify you how beautiful and how fresh everything is here. So why are we being required to comply with clean air standards set for Los Angeles when we don't have dirty air? Why am I being forced as a rural resident in a place where the environment is pristine to put a $20,000 exhaust filter on a $4,000 tractor because air in Los Angeles is dirty? So those are the things we're fighting. A one-size-fits-all government does not work in the state of California. It's almost 1,000 miles long, for goodness sakes. We need representation that we can use for our communities for the benefit of our people and not allow people from 500 to 900 miles away to subjugate us.
All right. Now, I'm going to just mention more issues and just expand. It'll help if you do. You don't like that they banned gold dredging in the Klamath River. What's that about?
Well, first of all, the same environmental groups that want to tear out the dams, claim that gold dredging is harmful to the environment. Now, the 1872 mining law guarantees miners the right to extract minerals from property that they have claims on. The Constitution allows them to use their property to benefit themselves and their families. Dredge mining does not harm the fish. In fact, it builds deep water pools that the fish like to summer in because the water is colder at the bottom. It cleans the gravel. It takes mercury out of the water. One thing the environmentalists claim is that miners put mercury in the water. Well, what do people think? That they go down to the edge of the river with a handful of mercury and throw it in? Quite the opposite. The gold dredges clean naturally occurring mercury from the river. They don't put it in. But yet these lies are perpetrated in places where people don't understand the process, don't bother to find out, and all of a sudden we lose another segment of our economy that used to provide jobs and money for local people.
Say, just to ask you, was this a viable gold dredging operation? Did it produce something?
Oh, absolutely. There's still a lot of gold left in this country, especially in Northern California.
Boy, you really... all right, I can see you really do not like the old Green Party platform. That's for darn sure. But you're saying this is the death of rural America. Really, you really are. And you want out.
Well,
Look,
this is the death of rural America. And constitutional republic guarantees the minority the same rights as enjoyed by the majority. We want a return to a small rural state with constitutional republic that protects the rights of the individual, their rights to property, and their rights to use that property to benefit themselves and their family.
And what do we have instead?
What we have instead is a form of socialism that is literally strangling the entire state of California and miring it in $1.2 trillion in debt with no place to go but down.
All right, and you're saying, of course, rural Northern California is liable for part of this debt.
Yes. I mean, in order to have integrity and have an honorable outcome, when we separate, we must assume our portion of the debt, because even though we weren't represented, we weren't asleep when they were blowing the money, so to speak. And so according to the state's attorney general, based on population, we would be responsible for 3% of California's debt because we will be leaving with 3% of the population.
Oh, gosh. Okay, Mark, we had a very good interview. Now, before Kevin Barrett comes on, please tell people how to get hold of you. Quick.
SOJ, Sierra Oscar Juliet, 51.net, and the time has come for 51 states.
We got that from this interview. Thank you, Mark. It was quite enjoyable.
Barry.
I hope everyone agreed. See you in 7 with Kevin Barrett. This is Barry Chamish. Once again, thanks, Mark.
Gold and silver is tremendously undervalued. Global demand vastly exceeds mine supply by more than 60% annually. There is little in the financial world more certain than a coming explosion in the prices of gold and silver. The U.S. dollar continues to lose value and respect as the world's reserve currency. Our nation faces challenges on many fronts, and a day doesn't pass without another economist bringing forth warnings of impending economic calamity. There has never been a better time than right now to acquire physical gold and silver. Discount Gold and Silver Trading was founded on the principles of truth and honesty. We believe in providing a quality product, quality service, and most importantly, competitive pricing. We provide all forms of precious metals, including American gold, silver, platinum, and rare investment and circulated coins. Silver bars, rounds, and 90% silver bags are on hand for the silver investor. Gold self-directed IRAs are available. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free, that's 1-800-375-4188. years ahead of the dominant media. FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. Kenyans have been voicing their anger in the streets of the country's capital. They're responding to the news that there was a 7-hour delay between the time authorities learned of last week's deadly attack by gunmen at a college and the time police finally arrived at the scene. Kenyans want to know if the